to be here in Oberhausen for our only gig on the David Gilmour tour this year. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Phil, you are part of the David Gilmour band, but you're also the producer of the new album, so which is a really responsible job, I guess. Can you tell me something about being the producer of Rattle That Lock?
Well, I am the co-producer actually with David, and also part of the team is Polly Sampson, his wife, who has written most of the lyrics on the album. So we're a little team really, and David, traditionally, I've been working now with him for 12 or 13, 14 years, will play me lots of little snippets of stuff that he records on a mini disc player or a cassette player or on his phone, and then I listen to them and I help tell him which bits might work together. Sometimes he then just does a whole demo himself because he can engineer as well, and sometimes I go to my studio and I put together some ideas and then bring it back to him. And so it's a process that goes on over a period of time, and then Polly, if she's writing the words, she will maybe at a certain point decide which song she would like to write words for. And so on this Rattle That Lock album, we had, maybe last January, we had like 30 tracks that we were working on. And I said, why don't we just cut it down? Just try and work on 10 and get them finished and make an album. And so that's what we did, and that's what Rattle That Lock is.
And how would you describe the relationship to David Gilmour? Are you kind of partners in mind, or are you just the opposite, and your help is so necessary because you're coming from a different standpoint of music?
I obviously, you know, I've been a professional musician for 40 years. I'm a guitarist. I know about guitars. I've produced over 60 albums. So I'm like a sounding board. You know, everybody does need someone to say, what do you think about this? You know, making a record is very much about teamwork, you know, and you have an idea and you think, well, I might say, well, yeah, that's a great idea. But what about if we took that bit and put it in backwards? And I try to think of crazy ideas, and then he might say, whoa, no, that's too weird for me, or whatever. Or he might say, I'm not quite like that, and then live with it for a bit. So it is like a process. But, you know, making records are a series of decisions. Yes, no. And you progress, hopefully, with a whole lot of good yeses and go in the right direction.
What for you as a producer or co-producer is the main difference musically between working with David Gilmour solo and working for David Gilmour as part of Pink Floyd?
Well, obviously, when I say it was a Pink Floyd album, but it was based on recordings that were done, historic recordings done when Rick Wright was alive. So David just said to me one day when we'd started working on this solo album, but then this came up, and he said, well, there are these jams that we did in 1991, which I had no idea about. He said, could you listen to them, see if there's anything that would be worth putting together from the fans' point of view, you know. So I went onto his boat studio, Astoria, and I spent about 6 weeks trying to make sense of 24 hours worth of recorded material. And I thought, well, in classical music you have movements, so why don't we have movements, 4 separate sections? And I started to put together beginning, middle, and ends of each of these sections, picking bits. I listened to every single scrap that they recorded, and then went back to him after 6 weeks and said, I think there's something that the fans would like. It's almost documentary as well, because it documents that last time when you all played together jamming in the old-fashioned way when you used to try and come up with material. There's a lot of Rick on it. A lot of the sounds are from all the different periods of Pink Floyd, so that's really nice. And from a fan's point of view, I've put together what I would like to hear from all the different periods, right from the very beginning before Dave was in it, right to, and he listened to it and said, "Yeah, I think this has potential. Go and play it to Nick." So I went and played it to Nick. He listened to it. He thought there was potential there, and then eventually, about 9 months later, it took a long time. David decided, why don't we just go into the studio, all of us together, and try and finish it off as we would as if we were doing an album. And so that's what we did, the January of the year before. And then we just worked through a process again of yes, no, let's do that, and ended up with The Endless River.